everyone, and welcome to The Art of Estate Planning. This is a Facebook Live. It is the 14th of December 2023, and we know everybody's lining up for the Christmas time of year, but we're hoping you're here to join us for what is going to be a really interesting presentation by Rafael Cohen and Chris Hill at Inherit Australia. They've been kind enough to share their time with us about the services that they provide, which we strongly believe will be really helpful for all of our advisors. Now, I know that Rafael and Chris are going to speak majority sort of to the particular advisory aspect from a financial planner and accounting side, but certainly as lawyers, I believe there's a lot of value that can be made or can be had from information coming to us that is succinct and correct, and that's what Chris and Rafael are also going to be talking about with us today. So I won't keep us here any longer. I'm going to hand over to Rafael and Chris, and let's get excited about information passing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Carrie, and welcome everyone to this presentation. And we're delighted to be here to share with you about Inherit and why Inherit has started, and something that we think is very new, very fresh on the market, and of something that's certainly relevant to advisors. Just as a bit of a backstory, I've been a financial planner for about 30 years, and this probably leads into the first part of the presentation, which is, why did we start this? Well, just a little bit of a background. I've been a lawyer for some 35 years and practicing in the area of estate planning and SMSFs, and Raf has been a tech person that's been involved with software as a service for over many years. So we combine, I think our combined skill set goes over 50 years. But I think just to sort of give you a bit of a backstory to this, as a financial planner, every year I'd go to a PD day or annual conference, and the topic of estate planning would come up. But it became a bit of a footnote to the discussion because planners were sort of either rolled out to a trustee service or introduced to a single, legal house. But for the most part, it was an outsourcing model. And yet what I found very strange was that the relationships that you as an accountant or planner has with a client is very strong. And often clients would come to me as a lawyer and I would ask them questions, and they would say to me, well, why don't you talk to my accountant or my financial planner? They've got all that information. And it just seemed to me that there was this dysfunction in the way information was gathered about estate planning, and that financial planners really were somewhat shut out of the industry and didn't have the opportunity to provide financial planning. And typically they just provided it as a footnote in their statement of advice. You need to update your financial plan, but they were powerless to do anything about it. And yet they knew their clients were aging and their client database, and they knew their clients' families, and they knew there were problems, but typically people don't want to do anything about their problems. And so they were powerless to do anything about it. And I guess from my perspective, this started a journey which started about 5 years ago about how do we find a better solution. And as I started talking to advisors around the country, in fact, the dealer group I was with at that time, which was Securitor, owned by Westpac, introduced me to running a number of estate planning topics. And I would ask advisors, well, why don't you get involved? And these were the objections. I don't know anything about estate planning. I have no clue how to run an estate planning meeting. The second objection was estate planning is legal advice, and I don't want to be giving legal advice. I'm not covered for it, and it's the lawyer's job. It's not my job. And then the third question was, well, there's no money in it for me. I can't. There's no part for me to play in this process. And in fact, a lot of advisors expressed dissatisfaction, particularly accountants, because the client would go to a lawyer, and then the lawyer would say, okay, where's your trust deeds? I want to know your financial records. Can I have your financial statements for your trust? And tell me about your family. And the client was then going back, or the lawyer was going back to the accountant or the advisor to gather information for which the advisor or the accountant was getting no remuneration for. And so there was this sense of frustration, particularly amongst planners, that they were giving a lot of information, but they were sort of shut out of the process. And so from that has started a really long journey, which has led to today and a lot of development around how do we make this process a lot better for advisors? How do they get in? How do you get involved in estate planning? And even talking to lawyers, we discovered, and this has been more recently, that there's been a significant shortage of skilled estate planning lawyers. In fact, from my perspective, very few lawyers understand superannuation death benefits. Very few lawyers understand about Centrelink issues concerning estate planning or aged care advice. So when you include a more holistic estate planning consideration, a lot of lawyers are not equipped to deal with it. And what do exist are very hard to find, hard to recruit from a legal firm's point of view. And of course, there's territorial and geographical issues. Each state, there are different estate planning jurisdictions and different estate planning laws. Added to that, of course, lawyers are time poor and they have limited capacity to do more work. So when you add a shortage of lawyers and their own time being limited, and of course, then lawyers were sort of saying to us, look, collecting data about, who tell me about your family and who do you want as an executor is not really high value work, and it's difficult for us to meet budget, and lawyers typically, particularly the skilled lawyers, and because of their value and their price and their cost to serve and their charge out rates, want to apply their skills more efficiently to giving legal advice or more specialist advice. So we've embarked more recently, and we'll touch on in a moment, about how do we provide a better solution to lawyers. But traditionally, this problem has come from advisors saying, well, how do we get involved in the industry? So at this point, I'm just going to hand you over to Raf to talk about the process and how it applies to lawyers, advisors, in how we solve estate planning.
Yeah, no, you can keep my screen, Chris's screen. That's the same slide. Thank you. So in terms of the process we designed for advisors that includes the lawyers and the clients, we have a 6-phase process that is on screen, and it starts from the kickoff. The idea is to minimize the data entry or duplicate data entry, and we connected via API to a number of platforms already. We have Xplan and Midwinter for the financial advisors. We have Xero XPM for accountants. That's the accountant side of Xero. And we're working with other platforms like BGL to include SMSF advisors into this platform as well. And the idea is that you don't have to re-enter all the data that you already have in your backend systems. Then you go and work into a data collection phase that is either done by advisors, the clients, or the lawyers. For every client, you can decide how to run this phase. If the client is very simple, you can just offshoot it to the client, let them do it themselves. If the client is a high-value client for the practice, you can do it in-house, invite the client for a meeting, and do it on the big screen in the boardroom. When you complete that phase, you go into scope and quote. You select a lawyer. If you're an advisor, you can select a lawyer, or you can have a preferred lawyer from a panel of lawyers that are all approved by Inherit. We currently have lawyers in 4 states, and we're growing that base, so every state will have their own lawyers. Once you select a lawyer, you send all the information about the client to the lawyer. The lawyer approves the client. The system is pre-quoting the lawyers, basically the price of the whole estate plan, which we'll review in another slide in his presentation. And then the lawyer accepts the quote and move to a legal advice phase. And the idea, again, is for advisors to avoid providing legal advice to their clients. And we leave it with the lawyers to provide the legal advice, which is basically their core profession. Once we have a plan, the lawyers can go into drafting documents. Once again, advisors can be involved in this process, in reviewing drafts, making sure it's all correct. And finally, we go into signing. Again, it depends on the jurisdiction. In Victoria, you can do it remotely as well. In all the other jurisdictions, it's still wet signatures on a paper. Chris, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I think we can explain this process by talking around the benefits of the process.
Yeah.
So looking at it from a client's perspective, what we're trying to do is address the overarching problem that there's about 50% of Australians have a will, or probably 50% or less have a current will. So we're trying to make this process more convenient by collecting data in one environment and providing for clients access to a range of specialist lawyers in different jurisdictions. As many of you know, just between the states, we have different estate planning jurisdictions around family provision claims. New South Wales has notional estate provisions. So there can be some complexities dealing with clients if they've got assets in different states. And sometimes it's appropriate for a client to have advice from a lawyer, maybe in another state, particularly in New South Wales. The other thing that clients have said to us is, look, this is a great system, but can we have price certainty? How much is this going to cost? And so this is part of as we'll show you in a moment, the bedrock of the system is to create that price certainty, create the scoping certainty for both the advisor, the client, and of course the advisors have the cold face of the client and need to address that with the client, and obviously the lawyer who is a party to this process. And in overall, the client becomes more engaged with the process and strengthens that relationship with their advisors. What we want to see and what we believe in is that financial planners and accountants should be the lead advisors of their clients' affairs. You guys are managing their wealth. You've helped develop that wealth. You're very good at wealth accumulation. You may be protecting that wealth through risk and insurance and risk services. So very good at protecting it. But most advisors lack in the area of wealth distribution, right? This is the estate planning piece. And a lot of advisors have said to us, which is what's led us to go down this path, is, well, how do we get involved in the transfer of our clients' wealth to the next generation? How do we build those bridges with the next generation? What systems and processes can we do that? How can we position ourselves holistically as the client's lead advisor of all of their wealth? And because the clients have these strong relationships with their advisors, and naturally they want their advisors involved in that wealth transfer. And we've seen, and I've seen as a financial planner, so many instances where a client has died and then the file has gone to the client's lawyers, and they've just sold all the assets in the estate and triggered CGT consequences when assets can more appropriately be transferred into testamentary trusts, like the trust that Tara drafts for you guys. You know, you can better manage the estate assets if you are involved in the client's affairs. And it's very hard for advisors to be involved when the kids who are the beneficiaries don't have a relationship with you. So what sits behind this process is a desire by Inherit to help you get involved in managing your client's wealth transfer, which adds value to your businesses and build and strengthens those relationships that you already have. So that's something that we actually see from the client's point of view. They've said to us from our surveys they want their advisor involved in this process. And how can that happen? And then what we've done, as we'll show you, is provide a digital storage of all of their assets, including the narratives and the discussions that the client has had with their advisors, the lawyer, the planner, the accountant, and any other parties, that is tracked and recorded for audit purposes. And this is particularly important if things go off the rails and it ends up in court. What we've done is developed an evidential trail that can be admitted into court of all the communications, including changes to documents, which typically happen, through exchanges of emails between different parties. We can capture this in the Inherit environment. So that's the benefits from the client's perspective. From the advisor's point of view, we've provided the option, as Raf will show you in a moment, of different levels of client engagement. So you can engage with the client and provide what we call full facilitation. That is, you take them through the system. And to address that first question that I touched on earlier about how do I know how to have a conversation, the Inherit system is a narrative-based system. You don't have to, anyone can run a conversation or a client meeting. Think of it like a teleprompter and a virtual lawyer whispering in your ear. As a client answers a question, then ask the next question and the next question. It's there on your screen. You can, on a tablet or any device or laptop, you can have a conversation with your clients. Your paralegal staff or paraplanning staff can have a conversation with the clients. And deal groups love this because one of the concerns that we had when we presented this to Westpac as part of the Securitor group is how do we make sure that our advisors are not giving legal advice? And we've been signed off by a number of dealer groups because they know that the system is robust enough to sort of to allow you to just follow the questions in the narrative bot. So you ask, it tells you the question to ask, as we'll see in a moment, from the client, and the bot will develop the line of questioning depending on the responses. So providing advisors don't stray from that process, there is certainty that there is no risk of giving legal advice. And so as you can see here, the legal bot helps you drive the conversation and eliminates the risk of you giving legal advice, which is the issue that has been at the heart of all of our inquiries and discussions with planners and accountants. The issue about how do I make sure I don't give legal advice? How do I know what questions to ask? I know nothing about estate planning. I'm good at tax. I'm good at financial advisory work. I don't know anything about estate planning. And as you'll see, the power of the system is that it will go deeply into SMSFs, offshore assets, and it will tell you the questions that you should ask to gather the relevant information that will identify issues. And in fact, it will generate an issues report that you can give to a client that will form the brief to the lawyers so that their time is better utilised in addressing the gaps in the client's estate plan or the legal issues that are being addressed, dealing with non-estate issues, assets, dealing with SMSF death benefits, excess transfer balances, aged care issues, all those things. The idea is that the lawyer then addresses relevant issues and their time is better utilised. And through this process, what we've done is the intention is to have lawyers from different states, as Raf has mentioned, in different jurisdictions be on the panel. And that way we're lawyer agnostic. This is not about promoting a legal house. We believe that not every client suits one particular lawyer. There's different clients in different jurisdictions. Lawyers have different expertise. We've got a lawyer on the panel that specialises in succession planning for farms in New South Wales. I'm a lawyer on the panel that specialises in SMSF death benefits. We've got lawyers in other states that have a family law focus. And so you, as an advisor, can select a lawyer based on the profile that best suits your client. And as we'll see in a moment, when you get the quote, if you want to shop around for another lawyer, you can do so on the panel. That allows you as the advisor to have full control of this process. And what we intend to do from this process is to reduce the cost of the lawyer, because you're allowing the lawyer to spend their time more effectively dealing with legal issues, not asking them questions about their family or their testamentary wishes. We're allowing the time that a lawyer would charge for you to charge. So this is designed to provide you with an income stream to provide value to the client, which shouldn't, in theory, cost them any more if you charge as a lawyer would charge, but you can add other time and services based on your cost to serve as well. But the idea is that you control and drive the process. A lot of the planners have said to us, look, Chris, I say to a client every year, you've got to go and get your will updated. And they come back for a review in 6 or 12 months' time and ask the client, did you get your will updated? And the response is, no, I haven't got round to it. You know, it's one of those things, it's not sexy to talk about death, right? No one wants to talk about things that are difficult, especially if there's conflicts in the family, especially if there's blended family issues. Sometimes there's tensions in the current family about how to deal with kids from other relationships. And so it tends to get buried. But you as advisors know how important that is and how it needs to be addressed. But a lot of planners have said to us, well, we just keep saying to clients, go and see a lawyer, but we can't drag them to a lawyer and we can't do anything about it other than just give them a business card. And that's as far as we can go. This process allows you to go through and drive the process right through to conclusion, to the execution of documents, the appointment of a lawyer, if you want to do the full facilitation process, and the signing off of documents to get things done and to get issues dealt with that you know need to be dealt with. Full facilitation is... Sorry?
No, sorry, Chris, I was just going to give you a break if you needed one, but keep going if you're on a roll.
I'm fine, Carrie.
You're fine. You're on ready. It's nice to see you're passionate about what you're talking about.
Oh, look, I mean, I've been doing this for many years, and guys, I've been a financial planner. I've been a financial planner for 28 years. and a lawyer for 35. So I know both sides of the fence. And I know every time.
I think what's really interesting, and you've obviously, you're talking a lot about it, but I think two things. The first part is that, we're so afraid when we're not lawyers to give legal advice, about stepping over that part. What I find absurd about the notion of not wanting to be involved in the legal process is that we really only get to the right conclusion for clients when we do work together.
Yeah.
The estate planning should always be holistic.
Yes.
And any failure not to join together really does the client a disservice. So this is obviously providing a platform where you can bring those people together in a way that makes the client still feel like they're driving the process.
Yeah, and really, it's not about excluding people from the process. It's, in fact, it's about bringing people together. I mean, I've had clients. I did an estate plan about 18 months ago where a client had $10 million in an insurance bond in the Isle of Man. And the question for the client was, what happened when he died? Is that bond covered by, what jurisdiction, which law? So we actually engaged with a lawyer I think he was in Hong Kong at the time, a succession law specialist who knew about UK inheritance tax and whether it applied. You're going to get people. You may have a client that may have a risk of a family provision, and the lawyer may want to get a barrister involved. So with this platform, you can bring multiple parties together through one convenient platform and to share information without having to repeat it. That's the benefit of inheritance, to avoiding the repeat of it. But Carrie, I just want to talk a little bit about the other services, because full facilitation is at the heart of this process. But advisors have said to us, particularly in the last 6 months, look, Chris, there's some clients that we don't think it's worthwhile going through this process because they're either price sensitive or their fares are simple, or we just don't have the time or the resources, right? We know they need to do estate planning. We'd love to use your system. We just don't have the resources to do it. So what we have developed recently is what we call Inherit Express, which is where you can say, look, here's a client. I'm going to hand them on to a panel lawyer. I'm not going to be involved, but I'll use the API options to pull data from Xplan, Midwinter, Xero, BGL, whatever, and pass it on to the lawyer. That avoids me having to deal with multiple emails from the lawyer asking for trust deeds, asking for information. I can handball it, knowing that the client is going to get their affairs properly managed, and I can monitor it. I can have a watching eye over it without spending any time on it. So Advisor Express has been used by a number of advisors, either for the bulk of their clients or a segment of their clients. And they've said, well, look, for the high net worth or for the more complicated ones, I want to do the full facilitation. So we've provided these different levels of engagement, including ones where we can just send a link. You can send a link to a client and they can go through the bot process without you even touching the client. So we've provided a system where advisors can determine the level of touch or interaction or engagement with their clients based on cost to serve, time available, or resources within your practice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Chris, if you go to the next slide, exactly. Yeah. It's exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah. So this just gives you a bit of a graphical representation where you can see from the first one, you have, you get involved for at least half of the process, and then from the quote stage onwards, it's handballed over to the lawyer, and the lawyer may want to book, bring you into the meeting, or you can be part of those meetings. It's entirely up to you. The Advisor Express, you can see there is a lot less in terms of time. You may just do the API integration and referral, and then the bottom one there is where you have nominal amount of time. You can put in your statement of advice, for example, a hyperlink to Inherit to say, look, we think you should review your estate plan. We encourage you to do it. Here's a link. Go and follow this link, and you can go through this process, and either you or we can choose a panel lawyer. So this is the client self-serve process. But unlike the online solutions that we see today, we believe that lawyers need to be involved in the process. We've already seen legal disputes involving some of these online document providers where clients haven't properly executed documents. We think it's dangerous for clients to just go onto an online service and do it themselves. They don't understand, as you guys do, the difference between estate and non-estate assets. and the importance of how documents are executed.
Yeah.
Again,
just,
the lawyers.
Just to add here, there's another trend of advisors and lawyers that already had a relationship, and they're basically joining the platform. The lawyer is the preferred supplier for the advisor, so we leave that relationship. If you already have the relationship between the legal and the advisory practices, we're trying to basically encourage you to strengthen this relationship and create a preferred lawyer for the practice. You can mark it as a preferred. So in all the client-driven scenarios, the client's only going to have the option of that preferred lawyer to choose. So you're not shopping like the clients shop around. You basically refer clients to your preferred lawyer via the system, which is driving the client into the estate planning process.
Yeah. So for those of you, and I don't know if this works with Tara's service, but if you want to engage with Tara, she can be your preferred lawyer. And so in that sense, we're lawyer agnostic in the sense that we provide a panel of lawyers, but if you have one, as Raf has said, that you want to work with, we can add them to the panel. We do screen lawyers. It's a question we get asked by dealer groups. How do you admit lawyers to the panel? And basically, we screen them based on their experience, their qualifications, obviously, and the value that they can provide to advisors on the panel, because we want a diversity of skill sets. We've got a specialist estate accountant on the platform who provides services around tax-related issues on death. So, we're trying to provide a different variety of advisors on the platform. But if you've got somebody that you work with, as Raf has said, please, you can let us know, and we just need to screen them. But the screening process is not rigorous. It's really about understanding. Part of our due diligence, understanding that they've got a relevant estate planning qualification or experience.
Chris, just before you move on there, because again, we do have a large platform of lawyers. If anybody was interested in joining, I know that they can probably contact you through the website, but I noticed that you said you've got lawyers in 4 states at the moment. Are you shopping for states outside of that? And if that is the case,
Yes.
What states are you looking for? Because again, if we put that up there, then we might have people in the group that are interested.
Yeah, look, that's a good question, Carrie. I mean, our goal is to have lawyers in every state of Australia. They're only there because of the 4 states that we've got. That's where most of our advisors are using it. So they're looking for lawyers in that state. But as we grow and as more advisors come on from different states, we're appointing more lawyers. We've got a number of lawyers joining in WA because we've got more advisors joining. So, and we don't necessarily want to limit the lawyers in that state as well, but it comes down to basically demand by advisors for lawyers in that state, because we know estate planning is a state-based jurisdiction, and it's always better, particularly where there's risk of family provision issues, to get advice from a lawyer in that state, knowing the relevant judicial views around family provision issues, particularly in New South Wales with national estate, for example. So
South Australia is a jurisdiction we don't have any lawyers at this point. So if there are any South Australian lawyers on this session,
it's territory too, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Raf, I don't think. And
territory as well. Yeah.
Those are 2 states that we are a bit light on when it comes to members in general, but I think that's a population size thing as well. But certainly we do have members in our community who either practice exclusively in that area because they live there, or cross jurisdiction, because we do have clients that, and the same with advisors, right? We have clients that own assets sometimes in different jurisdictions, and sometimes we want state-specific advice or we want general advice. So if anybody is in the Northern Territory or South Australia listening to this training, please feel free to reach out to the Inherit guys, because clearly they might be looking for people in those areas. Yeah,
and I think if I was to cast our views forward, I mean, we believe that on the panel we should have a greater range. We're also looking at perhaps appointing a lawyer in the United States on the panel, because we have clients. You have clients with assets in the US. And and Uncle Sam's got long arms, and there's US inheritance tax considerations, and you may need to get advice from a lawyer in the US about, living trusts or inheritance tax issues. So as feedback from advisors comes, that panel will grow. We're also looking at possibly having a geriatrician or neuropsychologist on the panel about looking at testamentary capacity or giving advice around that. So the idea is that you'll have a supermarket of professionals that your particular client, you can select based on their bios, their profiles, and some screening that might be relevant to your client's particular circumstances, as Carrie's indicated.
That's great to know, Chris. We also do have a number of dual qualified practitioners for countries outside of Australia as well as Australia. So that's, again, anybody listening, if they think that that's something they can add in terms of value, get in contact with the team at Inherit.
Yeah. I think more people that come on board, the more that we all benefit, and we all learn as new developments come. And the idea is that it'll be a single hub, a single resource, not just for knowledge, but the process of completing an estate plan and driving it. As we talked about lawyers, we actually had lawyers come to us who are on the panel and said, "Hey, this is really good. I mean, can we use it for our clients?" Because, as we said earlier, we just don't have enough staff. We just don't have it. And I'm one of those, right? My business, my legal practice just does not have enough estate planning staff. I could handle more work if I had more lawyers. Somehow, like a lot of professions, they've disappeared post-COVID. So lawyers have said, "Hey, can we use the efficiencies of your system in gathering information to help us, work more efficiently? We can use paralegal staff to run these meetings using the narrative of the legal bot, and maybe we can even get clients to, before the meeting, go through the process, and we can then better scope and outsource to other lawyers within the practice." So we've developed that in the last 4 months, I think, Raf. This service offering now to lawyers to better utilise paralegals and their time, just as it does for the way planners and accountants use it, and to better scope their legal services and to delegate work. What clients often do, and if you're a lawyer listening, you'll have the same experience. Clients will ring into my office and say, "How much will it cost for a will or a power of attorney?" And of course, we all have a sort of a template price for a testamentary trust will or basic will, but we know that's just the start. When the client comes in, they may spend 2 hours talking about the jewelry they want to distribute to 14 beneficiaries, or the fact they want to exclude someone from their will, or they've got $20 million in a series of trusts that they've inherited from their parents. And suddenly the cost of doing a will or power of attorney becomes somewhat irrelevant. It's the cost of addressing all these issues. So what the Inherit system does for lawyers is identify and scopes the work, and that then provides an estimate of the time before the client walks into the office. You'll be able to tell the client what it's going to cost, and it'll identify if you can provide that service and which staff within your office are best addressed. If a client came in and wanted advice around SMSFs, they'd probably come to me. If they wanted advice around disability trust, they'd go to one of my other lawyers, right? There's vulnerable beneficiaries involved. So this has been very useful for lawyers to be able to better scope and quote their services and to optimize their time, as well as provide a single platform. And what the other benefit is that lawyers have now gone back to their referral sources, like you guys, the rest of you, accountants and planners, have said, "Hey, we're using this platform. Would you guys like to work with us? It's a better way that you can get involved, and we're happy for you to take this part of the process and have those discussions with the client with the use of the bot, and we'll be involved in the legal piece." In fact, I've got an advisor in Queensland who's just said, "I've got 4 referral sources I'd like to introduce them to, because I will get more lead work from them." It's a way of pulling work from advisors rather than just waiting for the referral to come in, and to use time more effectively. What we've effectively done, Carrie, is just looked at the estate planning process, and we've said, look, you don't need a lawyer to ask about your family. Who do you want as an executor? That's not legal advice. So we very carefully looked at the whole conversation that a lawyer would have with a client, and we've said, what questions would a lawyer ask that doesn't involve providing legal advice? And from that perspective, we've then handed that to you as the advisors, using the bot to very carefully scope the questions without you actually giving advice. And the advice piece comes once all the issues are identified for the lawyer to address down the track. This shows in a graphical way basically how the process works from a lawyer's perspective, and indeed from a planner's perspective. We can deal with clients who have got very basic families with no entities, right up to clients who've got intergenerational trusts, SMSFs, and offshore assets. So it's a system that you can use for all of your clients. It's not just skewed towards a particular section of your client base. Okay, I'm now going to hand back. I think I've done a lot of talking, but I'll hand back to Raf now, who
thank you, Chris.
Pricing.
So the first bit of pricing, and we touch on it again, is basically the way to estimate the pricing for clients, which arrive from clients and advisors saying we need some kind of a price certainty around how much it's going to cost. When we start the conversation with the client, the first or second question will be, okay, let's do the estate planning. How much is going to cost? So instead of basically pricing based on documents, which is fairly common in the industry from the lawyer's perspective, we try to implement what is very common in the advisory side of the market, which is value pricing. The more complicated the client, the higher the price, which means, and it actually makes sense because the lawyer will spend more time on a project that is complicated rather than just picking a template and filling up the blanks. So the way we design it, we have over 50 data points that are collected during the interview with the client. And what I'll do now is I'll switch to the actual application. And I'll show you an example of a price estimate that I prepared earlier today. Preparing the price estimate takes about 5 to 7 minutes. And it's also actually a request that arrived from accountants specifically saying, okay, before we actually start the process, we want to go with clients and show them how much it's going to cost. Because this is part of the selling point. Okay, it's going to cost you that amount of money. So we actually create a price estimator within the application that only asks the questions that are linked to these data points that increase the price of the estate plan, which translate to actual time that the lawyer will spend with the client giving legal advice, providing legal advice, and providing more complicated documentation. So in this example, I created a fairly complex client. We start from a basic. It's basically looking like a restaurant menu or basically a checklist. And then we add basically the price that we estimate the lawyer will charge for that specific item. So this client has basic. Obviously, they have one prior relationship, so they're in second marriage. One of the clients is self-employed, dual citizenship, New South Wales residents. They have to worry about the national estate. They have children from the same parents, and they have one child from previous marriage. So there may be basically more work for lawyers to handle this scenario. Something we didn't add to this model here is, for example, disabled children, that they have to be able to create provisions in the documents if the disability will impact the estate planning. These clients also have SMSF. They have a family trust. They own their home. They have one investment property as well. And there's a whole list of questions around SMSF, how complicated it is, if all the documents are up to scratch, if they have to redo the documents. It means the lawyer will have to redo the deeds or review the deeds at least. And how complicated will be the actual estate plan. And we arrive to this price for the client, adding GST, etc. So the idea is that as an advisor, you can pre-estimate how much the lawyer will charge before you even engage the lawyer to do the job. And then you basically jump to the next step with a client of, okay, let's do it. And from here, you can go and start the actual bot and run through the estate planning questionnaire and basically get the process going.
If I could just add that the reason we've gone down this path, which is different to the way most lawyers charge, as Raf mentioned, which is based on documents, is that we know that the cost to serve is often more than just the drafting of the document. It's the advice piece that sits outside of it. By having these basically 50 different fields of or items, which creates the pricing calculator, we can collect over a period of time feedback from lawyers about whether that price or that component is too low or too high, So sort of like the Goldilocks situation, get a price that's just right. The intention is that advisors can go onto the platform and choose lawyers based not on price, but based on experience and qualifications or the needs of their client. You know, I know too much of our time, a lot of our time is spent with finding somebody, but maybe they're too expensive, maybe, you know, for a particular client, right? You may have a very highly professional lawyer that's very skilled, but they're not appropriate for a client that's got basic affairs. You may need a lawyer with a particular expertise, but we would like to build a system, or we're building a system rather, that will allow you to choose a lawyer on the panel that's based on their experience, with a minimum of price variation. So as lawyers give feedback, these different components that Raf showed you will be modified, so that it doesn't become a case of, well, my testamentary trust costs X, another lawyer's testamentary trust costs Y. So it's designed to help you select lawyers based on, particularly where there's advice involved. Obviously, the drafting of the documents is really important, but the selection of lawyers based on skills is probably more important, and matching that lawyer with your client.
Yeah, and from the other side, we basically create lawyers the freedom to select the right documents for the client, so they don't have to stick to the menu that they're currently employing. So clients are shopping on documents. Let's get the cheaper document. So the lawyers are actually selecting the right document for this particular client based on the complexity of the situation.
Yeah. So those of you a lot of you will want to use Tara's trust deed, for example. So you can if you're a lawyer, certainly you can have that. You know, you have that option available to you. We're not here to tell you what documents you should have or should use, and that's the flexibility we want to create from this platform.
Okay, moving on to pricing. So the pricing, and we've been working fairly hard with advisors over the last 3 years around pricing. When we started, it was much more complicated. Currently, we have 3 levels of pricing for Inherit. It starts from the pay-as-you-go, which is obviously pay-as-you-go, so it's free per month. There's no monthly fee attached to it. However, if you want to facilitate an estate plan, it's going to cost you $200 per estate plan. So you don't have the ongoing expense. That fits to casual advisors or accountants that have, say, 1 or 2 a month or even less. And they can basically sign up to the platform. They can still have sight of the panel. They can use it. However, they don't have the ongoing outlay of the monthly fee. And if they have a client that come on board, they pay the $200 just for that client. If you want to use the branded link on that's a comment here at the bottom. If you want to use the branded link in your SOA or tax returns, and have the option to send clients to a branded website that is branded to your branding as the accountant or advisor, then there is a platform fee, basically a monthly fee for this, because we have to maintain this website. Moving up to the other 2 packages, we have the professional and the premium. The professional is for advisors that run more than 3 estate plans per month. That's the break-even point between the pay-as-you-go and professional. And then we have the premium, which is for larger firms that have multiple partners. We don't count seats, so you can add the entire team into the platform. You can add all your power advisors and paralegal, and even some advisors have the front of the house as users of this platform. The idea is that the value of this platform is providing estate plans, and it's not about getting more users in the office. So the whole office can be on this platform. They can have their own users, and it's important in terms of accountability to see who logged in and what they did and changed, which is also a feature that we actually missed in the other slide, which is the audit trail. We track every movement, every change users made in the estate plan, and we have a track record of who changed what at what stage. Is it the client? Is it the advisor? Is it the lawyer? And all this can basically be exported for the system at the end, so we know exactly the course of event throughout the estate planning process. This is why it's important to create users for all the people at the office, and this is why we don't charge per user. So we actually encourage you to have all users on the platform. Premium, as I said, it's 14 plans per month. This is for the larger firms with multiple partners, and again, they share the license, so it's across the entire firm. Looking at it from the other side, for the lawyers, it's very similar. Again, we try to make it as McDonald's menu as possible. So you still have the free plans. You have the casual, which is for 1 plan per month. And again, $200 plus 10% for additional plans over that license. Standard with 4% for plan per month. And the partner for the larger firms, again, multiple partners can share the license. The idea is the practice has the license, not per partner or per lawyer. Again, if you have any questions, just contact us after this, and we can give you more details around the lawyer side of the platform. Special offer for participants for today. This is something we offer you just for you to show up. So one is for the advisor side. We offer you one free estate plan, so that's a $200 gift. If you start the plan before mid-Jan, we know everybody are planning on the break, so we give you 4 weeks to basically prepare and think about it. If you can do it, obviously, in the next week, it's going to be quicker. When you sign up, just quote, there's a box for promotion, quote art, for the art of estate planning, obviously, 2023, and it will be automatically added to your account, and you can use that free facilitation. You only have to sign up by the 15th of January. You don't have to actually start the plan. For the lawyers, because we have to set up your account, we offer, again, 1 month free of the casual, the lower plan, if you want to start and check it out. You have to contact us by the end of the year, and please contact us on that email, or myself or Chris, and we'll create the account for you and apply that free month. Moving on to just to show a bit of the software, unless we have any questions, Carrie?
Sorry, I was trying to find the little unmute button. We haven't got any questions so far. I'm figuring it's because everybody's drinking their way through a lot of their Christmas parties. Probably also a few shy people as well. So that's okay. What we do find too is that a lot of people watch the recording later on, whether it be through, we've got an app where they can listen to later, kind of like a podcast as well. So if we have any questions as a result, feel free to send them through to us. We can facilitate a connection with Rafael and Chris to ask you questions, maybe in an environment that you feel a bit more comfortable, or in a time that suits you better.
All right, that's great. So let's just show a bit of what we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes. So this is the advisor side of the platform. If you've been using Jira or Trello or any other of the Kanban type software, you basically move items from the left to right, and we follow the process as we've seen in the presentation of the 6 steps, from data collection, lawyer selection. There are a couple of waiting response when you're actually waiting for communication, and payment, which is also included within the workflow. We implemented a number of payment options for clients. This is about the clients paying for the service. They can pay via the software. So basically, you can send them a link to pay your fee and the lawyer, like the advisor fee and the legal fees, as a one bulk. We also have the option for advisors to use basically to send the money through ComPay to the dealer group and then to the advisor with the unique code. And we also have the option for lawyers to charge via their internal billing. That's usually what is done with the bigger legal firms. They basically send the client is only approving the job within this platform, and then the lawyers are using their own internal billing system to do the actual billing and the invoicing. So they don't mix invoicing with this software. But again, it's up to you, and you can set it up, and we can help you set it up depending on your scenario and how you want to run payment. Then we have the documents, which is when the lawyer is actually working on documents, and finally review and signature. What I'll do now is I'll open an example estate plan that you can actually do yourself when you create, when we open an account for you. We created 2 demo plans that you can run through with all the information is already populated. It's very similar to a client that has data arriving from an API. We have Fred Flintstone, which is a middle class or upper middle class family with assets, entities, a complicated structure. And Marge Simpson is a simple case of a blue collar worker. Well, this is Marge Simpson from the TV show. What I'll do now is I'll open the Flintstone case. And this is a view of the bot system, which is very similar to what the client are seeing when they're logging in and completing their side of the bot. The idea is that you can share the experience with the client when you're looking at the screen on your screen and they're looking at their screen, even without creating a Zoom meeting or Teams. You can actually guide the client through the process while you log into your user. You're looking at the same software exactly when you're looking at this page. However, the client don't have the entire system behind it. They only have their particulars. So if I start one of the options, so I'm doing the family. Again, this is all pre-populated, but it's a demo estate plan. And we start from very simple, just picking up the details of the client. You have one question, one answer on every page. So you can even run it over the phone with the client if they're not literate enough to do it themselves. They don't want to do it over the computer. You can do it over the phone with the client or over a Zoom meeting. And basically ask the client, guide the client through the questions, but you're basically reading the questions from this and entering the answers on behalf of the client. If you go into what we call a narrative is when the system is veering off. It's basically like a lawyer creating a narrative around an answer of a client. And it's basically built over 700 questions that are inbuilt into the software. And a client is asked only the questions that are particular to their case. So let's say this client is working. So the answer is yes. And the next question will be, okay, now we're going into a working or employment narrative and what kind of employment it is, how they draw the income from their employment. So this is a trust income. And is it a full-time, part-time, what size of, what the capacity of this employment, and roughly how much they grossly make. We actually have a couple of questions around the gross income, how it is related to estate planning. Chris, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, the relevance of these questions, particularly from advisors, planners, is sometimes it's a difficult question or comment to make, but it's a question around, can you afford to die? Like, what happens if that income source, because we collect clients' income and debts and liabilities and assets, what we want to know is, what happens when that income source ceases? Is that income source coming from a trust that has a co-owner, like it's a business? And so we want to know, okay, if there's a co-owner, what happens to the interest in that trust? Is there a buy-sell agreement, or is there a shareholders agreement or unit holders agreement? How is the spouse or the partner, that's the surviving partner, what's going to happen if that income source ceases, or will it continue? So one thing we didn't mention, I'll just quickly mention it, is that from this process, we generate what's called an issues report, because what we're trying to do is find problems. And this is really good for clients who, maybe they don't want to go through the whole process. Maybe they don't want to spend a lot of time or a lot of money. But what you want to do is identify problems and then disturb them, right? And then show them that, okay, there's issues here. When your husband dies, his business partner, how's he going to get the interest in that company? There's no buy-sell agreement or shareholders agreement. So what we do is we identify these issues that you can then say to the client, okay, here's a problem and here's a report that you can give to them. Here's a problem. We now need to go and talk to a lawyer about this. So it's really good for sticky clients who don't want to deal with problems that they know exist, or maybe a bit price sensitive. And it's the way you can show value. You can demonstrate value to your clients. And yeah, sorry, Raf.
Yeah, that's fine. We're running a bit short on time, but what we're trying to show is that that's the hallmark of the client and family, is basically creating the family tree. This family is obviously pretty complicated, but the idea is that we're going down obviously to the children that may be the beneficiaries, but we also go left and right to the siblings from both sides, ex-partners, if they have any, and if they have, obviously, if the parents are there and there's a wealth going down from the parents to the actual client, has to be taken care of. And the idea is, again, once you add a parent, for example, we start asking, okay, are you going to inherit any, as a client, are you expecting to inherit any assets or wealth from parents, and what kind of assets are they going to be running down the family tree? And then we can plan for that, and the lawyer can plan for that when they're basically doing the documents and giving the legal advice. For siblings, ex-partners, etc., we're trying to understand if there are any hot points in this whole relationship, in all this family tree that the lawyer needs to take care of, and basically draft them in the documents when they arrive to drafting the documents.
What the legal bot will also do is identify, again, as part of this, identifying issues, is dependency issues. We see clients, particularly a lot of ethnic clients, who have parents living with the children, which creates interesting estate planning considerations, especially if the husband's parents are living in a household and the husband passes away. What happens to the house? What happens to the parents? Is there a claim or potential claim by the parents on the spouse? Is there provision made for the parents? So what the idea is to look at this in a very three-dimensional way, so that when the lawyer gets the brief, which is how it's presented, they can zero in on how to address some of these difficult issues. And the diagram like this is a very good way to get a snapshot of the family tree.
So moving on, the idea of let us know if we need to finish 2 minutes before for questions, Carrie.
I think show us as much of the dashboard as possible. I think because that's something that we wouldn't get a look into unless we do this process.
Yep. So in terms of the client, I guess just one comment. The idea is we trimmed it to chapters, so you can actually run it with the client in multiple sessions, and you know exactly, well, roughly how much it's going to take. Obviously, if it gets more complicated, it takes longer. But the idea is that you can, in a client meeting, say, let's do the family and assets now. It's going to take 10 minutes. It's at the end of the tax returns meeting, and we'll do the rest later. So at least you kick off the process with the client, and you do 2 chapters of the data collection, and then you can leave that later, and client can log in and do the rest from home. The idea is to give clients, we can't go to client and say, you have an hour interview now with us. Now we can do just 20 minutes, and then we split it to section, but the idea is to get towards the goal of sending it to the lawyer. Just to touch on lawyer selection. So the idea is, again, this is for one lawyer. Oh, it's all been selected here. So what I'll do is I'll basically progress. I think we have. What we can see here is basically a quote that was sent to the lawyer. And what we can do, I can basically move on to Chris if you want to pick up from here, and I'll load another plan if we have time, unless we have to conclude at this point.
Yeah. So the idea is that. Yep. Sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
The idea is that once you've collected the information from the client and maybe even generated an issues report, what the system will do is will provide a quote based on those 50 attributes. So once the system knows that you've got blended family issues or you've got ex-spouses or SMSFs, it will build a quote. That quote then you can send to a lawyer to approve. And what happens is it goes to the lawyer that you choose on that panel, and the lawyer will get a brief or a summary of the client's circumstances. In fact, what happens is the client signs off that data beforehand, because it's really a critical component of this, is that from a liability point of view, is the client says, yes, the information that's been provided is true and correct, or you can sign it off as you've done then and there. The quote is pre-prepared. You send it to the lawyer. The lawyer looks at the brief, which summarises that information. They can get the issues report, which identifies all the issues. and the lawyer can then look at the scope or the quote and say whether that's appropriate. It may be that the lawyer might say, well, look, I need to have 1 or 2 more meetings to discuss a number of issues here. They're going to be at least an hour. Maybe I need to add another $1,500 or whatever. They will then come back to you, say, I need to add another $1,500. These are the reasons. You'll get notified. So you'll get an email that says, Hill Legal contacted you, or Tara's contacted you, or whoever. This quote needs to be, we want to vary the quote. You can then go back to the client and say, look, there are a number of issues that need to be addressed. Maybe the trust deed has to be amended. Maybe there's new death benefit nomination. Maybe there's a review of an SMSF deed. Whatever that is, maybe there's discussions around family provision issues and ex-spouses or whatever, or children that have got dependencies. You can then go back to the client and say, are you happy to pay? This is what it's going to cost. This is my fee included. Are you happy to do that? And then through the platform, the advisor will just then click a link, and the lawyer gets access to the documents and can start working on the file. And the interaction all happens on the platform. So as the draft of documents are prepared, you can then send them to the clients. If there's any changes, the system has version control. So if the client decides they want to exclude somebody or reduce their entitlement from an equal share to an unequal share, we track all that for audit purposes. If there is ever an issue later on, even around testamentary capacity and about what's said, we can track all these communications, even video recordings. We've had a recent case in the Supreme Court in Victoria where a video recording was used very usefully in relation to a Greek family and whether they understood what they were doing. So we can load all that onto the system and keep it as an audit trail. I think we just hit the hour, Carrie.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chris and Rafael, for your time. I appreciate it's a very short amount of time to present obviously what's a very comprehensive system, and we need something like a comprehensive system because that's what estate planning requires in order to do it really well. I think that what is going to be really great about the system is that it does have that flexibility of different modes of service delivery, which a lot of systems don't. They kind of just do one of those particular processes. So I think you'll find that there'll be a lot of people very interested in the process that they can adapt to whatever their particular client needs or whatever their particular service model suits. For anybody that's listening, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to email us at hello@theartofestateplanning.com.au. If you want to be connected with Rafael and Chris, I'm sure they'd be happy to have a chat around some more information about how the system works that we aren't able to get to today. And also, if you are looking as a lawyer to expand your horizons a little bit, reaching out to Chris and Rafael about potentially being involved with Inherit Australia as well. So thank you again so much for your time, Rafael and Chris. We really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll be thinking about you over the Christmas time in a positive way, and might be reconnecting with you in the new year. Have a really, really great afternoon, everybody, and looking forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Thank you.
Thank you.